Welcome to DejaVue.
It's your favorite Vue podcast. You just don't know it yet. And we are in episode 52 here. It is Michael and me again, both on the microphones after the lovely episode with Patak all around Vue. Definitely check it out if you haven't heard or seen that yet. It's a long one as well. And of course, it's not only two of us, we have a wonderful guest. With us is senior front-end developer Dennis Adriaansen. Dennis, how are you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing very good. I'm pretty excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Of course.
Yeah, this is a bit of a special episode in a way. 52 episodes, I guess, that's a year in my books at least.
It's a milestone.
Indeed.
Yeah, it's a milestone. I don't know if we forgot to plan anything special.
I mean, there will be
other than having you on. So
if you had to say something, I had to get some confetti or something. But
yeah,
balloons. But I mean, there will be a kind of, let's say, unconventional episode in a little bit, so you can definitely stay tuned for that. So like maybe in one or two episodes from here, as a little, so to say, belated special. But yeah, it happened. 1 year of the DejaVue podcast, and hopefully many more years to follow.
Oh, congrats, guys.
Thanks.
Yeah,
thanks.
Thank you.
And well, coming from that whole year to another special, Michael, you also have a somewhat big announcement, right?
Yeah, so Mastering Nuxt is the second edition, or maybe not the second edition is not the right way of saying it, but the next big version, big update of Mastering Nuxt is coming out on March 25th, and that should be next Tuesday if you're seeing this in the first couple of days after it comes out. So you can go check that out at masteringnuxt.com. Yeah, we've been working on this for a while. It's a whole completely redone from the ground up. We're talking about all the latest stuff in Nuxt, including Nuxt 4, and that Nuxt 4 isn't out yet, but we can, do the compatibility thing. And so I'm excited for that one. You get to build an AI chat app, which is pretty fun.
Nice.
AI is kind of all the rage these days, but even if you don't like AI, it's a cool app to build.
Sounds great. Yeah, check it out. Link in the show notes, of course, as usual. And it's really nice what you cooked there over the last months, so to say, of like preparation, using all the new Nuxt features and diving a bit more into that.
Yeah, I'm excited. I hope people like it. So we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, if people try it, they should leave some feedback here or send it straight away.
Oh yeah, for sure.
We'll look into that. But yeah, coming from mastering Nuxt to someone who also mastered certain parts of Vue and Nuxt for sure, Dennis. Before we dive into a big main topic, I think people follow you on social media. They see a lot with like certain charts. We were curious and like, how did you get into programming after all, and how did you get in touch with Vue and Nuxt?
Oh, that's some time ago. I think I'm programming for more than 11 years now, and I did start with programming HTML, CSS, like all of us. And then after my internship, I went to a company, and I could stay there with a lot of smart people, and that was really fun. They introduced me to Angular 1.6, I guess.
Like Angular.js, basically.
Angular.js, yes.
Oh, wow.
Before the second two, yeah. It was pretty exciting, but other than I know Vue now, it was really MVC based. So model view controller, that was the thing then. That was like for the backend, and Angular introduced it for the front end. So that was my first framework that I touched. And at my second company, they worked with Vue. Primary reason for that was Laravel shipping Vue.js really early on. And the backenders there, they calling the shots. So they use Laravel, and they ship Vue. So why don't we use Vue for this project? And that was Vue version 0.6. I don't know, before the first release, I guess. So it was pretty early. I didn't know stuff. I didn't know reactivity. I barely know two-way data binding. So it was pretty rough to get started. But that was the start for my programming career.
It's a pretty common thing that we keep hearing again and again about how either people started with Angular because that was popular at the time, But then Laravel has had such a big impact on Vue, and I haven't used Laravel. I'm not part of that. Like I haven't touched that. I want to, as people, more and more people keep talking about it. But yeah, Laravel seems to have had like a really big influence on Vue and the popularity of Vue and how it
Yes.
shipped it at the beginning when it was not even version 1 yet, and and made it popular, or helped to make it popular at least.
Kind of crazy how such a framework can bootstrap another framework just by shipping it with it. I can remember a time that WordPress was programming on Gutenberg, their content management or the editor.
Yeah, the
And
blog editor.
and I heard sounds that they would choose for Vue too. I do think it's React now, I guess.
Yeah, it is. It has been React eventually.
It's
yes.
been React, yes. And they talked about maybe it's Vue. And I don't know, but if they choose Vue too, that will be a major step towards the Vue ecosystem, of course, but it's React.
Yeah, but it's also funny, like, I don't know, Wikipedia, like the Wikimedia Foundation, they, for example, also chose Vue as their like JavaScript front-end framework for all the like tiny things they need there. And quite some other like bigger companies chose it eventually. And Laravel is also someone who used Laravel in the past and came from the PHP ecosystem. So we have something in common there. Not as early as like Vue 0 point something, but I think like it was like Vue 2 already, like briefly after release or so. It's interesting that they, for example, switched back to Laravel Cloud to React, but they still, in a way, like they have Vue as first-class citizen with like starter kits, with a lot of things in there. And Aaron Francis, who we had on the show a couple episodes ago with Fusion PHP,
Oh yeah, I saw
also
that.
like
Yes. Yeah.
haven't like Vue as first-class citizen, like, hey, you can try it out, and people working on React, but Vue is the first in there. So it's still nice to see that even though React is, of course, the, let's say, biggest player in the ballpark, like Vue is still getting a very nice treatment, so to say.
Yeah. Would you guys think that if the job market is a bit bigger for Vue, like if you ask people objectively to choose between developer experience of React versus Vue, independent from the job market, I guess that so much more people would choose Vue. Or what do you guys think?
I think I'm not so sure about that, because what I've seen in the past is people like React because it's almost simpler in a way, because it's more JavaScripty and you can there's less built-in stuff. You get to choose all the different libraries and things, and I don't know if it's quite the same as it was a few years ago. Maybe it's more standardized for like routing and state management and stuff. But it seems like there's some people who just want that choice, whereas like in Vue or Laravel, it's like this is what you use, and it's easier in that way. So like I think different kinds of people gravitate
Sure,
towards
different
those two
frameworks.
approaches.
Okay.
I would probably think the opposite. So that's kind of interesting. Mainly because the just JavaScript part I think really changed with the composition API, because now like Vue is closer to like the just JavaScript thing. Why people don't do it is of course because in like boot camps, for example, and like education, React is the main thing because of like, okay, you want to land a job, you should know React. Well, I still think you can land a job if you know any of the major frameworks and can like have the desire or like the chance to switch if you need a job. But in terms of, let's say, how easy it is to learn a framework, I would say Vue is definitely still the number one, given how close it is to JavaScript, HTML, CSS, how you can just start straight away with a script tag. So you don't even need a build step necessarily, of course, though. Most of the applications nowadays have one. But even then, if you say you have a Laravel application, you need a little bit of progressive enhancement, you can throw in Vue. Reactivity, it just works. You don't have to think like, oh, I forgot a dependency in my like user memo or like user factor whatsoever. So I really think if more people would have seen Vue, and I think like similarly also frameworks like Svelte that are more like idiomatic and easy to learn, I think more people would probably use it if the job market wouldn't be like for, hey, you kind of need to know React. Dennis, I'm full on there with you, actually.
Let's change the job market then. Let's go.
I think it's really interesting because the question always comes up, right? And during Vue Amsterdam last week, there was also a panel discussion where, for example, Evan, Daniel Rowe, Jakub, a few other people, and I also had a chance to take part where we're in there. And of course, the question also comes like, job market. In the end, it's really about, for a company, it doesn't make much sense to switch to React if all the people, all the projects they have are like in React. except the departments can like own their own tech stack, which is great then, sort of certain size. But for like, I don't know, mid-sized company, if all the knowledge isn't there, it's really difficult. But then as a developer, you don't have to pigeonhole yourself saying, oh, you are a React developer. If you know React, you can learn Vue pretty easily and get going. You just have to be open to that. So the other thing is, I saw that on Reddit recently as well, where there was like a job post like, oh, I'm looking for a Vue job, where are all the good Vue
Yeah,
jobs?
saw it
And
too.
under that post, straight away under that, was some like, oh, we are hiring for Vue position. Why is nobody applying? So in a way, it's really difficult, and there might also be a mismatch in terms of like hiring culture. So it's no monocausal problem in a way.
Yeah. I think you're right on that. Yeah.
I think we also talked on the podcast about, I forget which episode it was, but about Nuxt maybe moving towards more like enterprisey level kinds of things, because there is like a big difference in features that like a marketing agency or a development agency or like these small businesses need, and like a big enterprise needs a different set of features. And so if Nuxt is more appealing to enterprise, then maybe that leads into more jobs as well.
That's a good point.
Yeah, makes sense.
This could have been episode 9 with Tim Bennix, where it was called Vue.js and Large Applications, or maybe with Daniel Rowe, one of the many episodes with him. Maybe episode 13,
Yeah,
which
I thought it was more
Road to Nuxt 4.
recent, actually.
I have to watch so much episodes still. That's I don't have the time.
Oh, it's always tough with podcasts, but it's great for like commuting, just like listening to that, or like I do it when I bike. I actually just came from a wonderful lunch with Rijk van Zanten, who was also on the show already, who is in town. I was like, let's grab some lunch. Okay. So that's always a great chance. Or like in a gym, that's always good. But then it's like ref versus shallow ref, and you're lifting some weights. And it's like
that kept you going, right?
In a way, yeah. It's like, oh, shallow ref, yes, there we go.
Well, if it's some hot takes that you disagree with, maybe it's like gets you like angry, and you're like,
oh yeah,
gets the blood going. You can
template string on top. That's really a good debate, and you get into a fight if you ask that.
Yes, script first, not the template tag. No.
So cool. I posted about my charts on Reddit, and Reddit is pretty not aggressive with their comments, but they say what they think. But in the ranking for most popular posts in the month was number 1 was let's put on the template tag on top, and you see that so many reactions and upvotes and downvotes. Yeah. It's triggered so many people. It's so cool with such controversy in the Vue ecosystem. It's so cool to follow.
It's also really funny. I mean, Michael, you posted about it on Twitter as well. I even made a video about it too. So in a way, they're like controversial takes, and it's, I think, good to know why that also changed from like template first to script first. Mm-hmm. But in the end, these are things developers love to discuss, and it's great, but it gives zero value for anyone.
Yeah. No one experiences it at the Fortnite side. No consumer or visitor will ever notice such tiny thing.
And your code doesn't run faster. Your code is like, it won't change for the product if you do template first or script first. It's like, honestly, settle on a convention, enable like an ESLint rule that, or like a linting rule. Now that we have also not only ESLint in the house, that just says, okay, template first, then script, or the other way around. And then you just agree on things and it's fine.
Yeah, exactly.
That will save you a lot of time you can actually put into features like shipping stuff. I know, like, we all love to bike chat and to discuss like, should we use this or that, or kebab case versus camel or Pascal case. Yeah. I know. It's all fun and games, but it doesn't lead us anywhere. Then let's talk rather about what should be in a composable, whatnot, because then you actually get some value out of it as well.
100% agree.
I've actually switched now, because I used to always just do template first, because that's what I did. And then since I posted about it and people told me that they didn't like that, then I was like, well, okay, if I'm going to do, like recording videos and different content, then I'm going to do it in a way that people are more used to. So I'm just going to stick with the popular approach, because at the end, it doesn't really matter to me how it's done. But if it's easier for you to follow in a video or something, then that's valuable.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
Though I also wonder, like, how much would it change compared to like, okay, fine, I have the template part first or I have the script part first? Is it like really that big of a deal for people? I'm not sure about that. It's hard to tell.
I don't know. I don't know for sure. It's. I think it's personal preference. Like if you like template first, go ahead. What's the most important is that you bring the team together, and with your direct team, you have to agree on one thing. And what you said, just set up a linter that's automatically formatting and forcing it that way. And I don't know if people have such a strong opinion that if they see a tutorial or video with the template tag above or script, that they like, oh, I don't gonna watch this video. They got a template tag up front. I don't know for sure. I think that people are looking for real value, like how to deal with reactivity problems or how to abstract your logic to a composer, what you said. So yeah, I don't know.
Well, it's just one of those things where it's like, okay, if I remember to do it, then it doesn't add any extra work for me, and it might make it a little bit nicer for some people. So, if I
But
forget to
maybe
do
worse
it,
for
then
others.
whatever. Then
Yeah, it's a kind of balance. Yeah, if you please others, you disappoint the other group, of course. But
So that's
yeah,
actually one of the challenges that I got with the previous version of Mastering Nuxt. Got a lot of feedback, and it was like all this like bimodal distribution, I guess, where some people were like, "Oh, you're going too fast," but then a whole bunch of other people would say, "Oh, you're not going fast enough," and
yeah,
then
it's so
or
hard.
like it's too like the material's not advanced enough, and then other people say, "Oh, it's too advanced," and stuff. And so it's like, well, you can't. That's why feedback is so hard sometimes, because you have to actually like look at it as a whole and like say, okay, this is like a whole distribution. I'm like
Yes.
sampling different data points, so I have to get a bunch of data points. I can't just like see one person on Twitter said this was like you talk too fast or you talk too slow, and you
Changes,
just have
Yeah.
yeah.
to take it all at once.
That's the thing. Like, if you
So
have the like Gaussian distribution, just a normal distribution, you have like on both sides, you always have people saying, okay, this is too easy, or this is too hard, or this is too fast, or this is too slow. And the best case is in most of the parts, especially with the speed, then put it down to 0.75 or to 1.25, depending on your needs. That's totally fine. I know a lot of people just listening to podcasts like 1.5. I usually do it as well. And that's good for learning. It's like, okay, if it's too easy, if you already know the content, then just skip ahead to the next lesson. That's also great. Or maybe, okay, there is like a beginner, intermediate, advanced
yeah,
course, and then you know as well. So, but if you have both ends, not only, I don't know, 90% of people saying it's too much or it's, I don't know, not enough, also like size wise or like how long the lessons are, then you kind of do things right, because you can't please everyone.
yeah, this is the last thing I'll say about Mastering Next before we turn this whole episode into like an ad for it. And then
We'll put it up in the corner.
we should get on to talking about charts and things, because that's why you're here, Dennis. So the last thing I wanted to say is that we're trying something new with the way that we structure it. So the first part of the course is like kind of like the basics, getting things set up. So like kind of building like an MVP of the app, so that then kind of partway through the course, if you already know the basics, you already know how to do routing and stuff like that, you can just skip ahead to that point, and then we start to go into like more advanced data fetching stuff and caching and route rules and all that kind of stuff. So you can like kind of skip the first part and not be bored out of your mind and like wondering when we'll get to good stuff. So I think it'll be nice. We'll see how it goes. Get some feedback on that, but I think that'll be a nice way of doing that.
Very nice. I'm
Yeah, I
looking
think
forward to it.
it sounds very reasonable, and it's a bit like the slicing that way. I see the benefits. So yeah, let's see how people like it. And in terms of people liking things, I heard a lot of people like charts, but they usually don't like building them. And Dennis, luckily you had a few tweets that went pretty well out there about a certain Vue chart library and like you building amazing chart components for Vue.js. So before we get into the release of Vue charts and how that all came together, why charts?
Ooh, that's a good question. I do think that the charts in general can make any dashboard or any interesting web page immediately more fun by its appealing. I don't know what it is. If you have two text blocks that are styled correctly and spacing is good, and you add a chart, it's instant more interesting. And I think the visual appeal about charts is what we as front-end developers very much appreciate. So I think that's for me the reason that I'm zooming in on the details. And I can tell you more about that later. But yeah, I do think that charts can boost a template or a web page enormously. Yeah.
I mean, especially for like, let's say a dashboard, you want some charts. You want to see like not only here is the text form, you want to have the things visualized, but even for landing pages, be it like for software as a service or if anything, like, yeah, some graphics in a way make a lot of sense. And I mean, there are also like tons of different ways to actually show that, which I guess also brings some difficulties because, well, I don't know. For example, one thing, I had like a side project where I basically just drafted a very simple uptime chart of something. And that already is like, okay, you don't have to write, oh, it was down 10 minutes, but more like you have the bars and you see where things were up or down. Already, like the GitHub commit graphs, another a great example, contribution graphs, not only
Oh,
commit.
that's so cool. Yes, I like them too.
It's so great just to see little things visualized. So we see a lot of graphs in the end. And I wonder, okay, graphs are great. We'll see them, but there are like tons of solutions out there already, like from things like, okay, just use your own SVGs, like just come up with a few tiny rectangles here and there. You have a bar chart. Ta-da.
Yeah.
To like more complex solutions like D3, for example. So how did you get into like building chart components, first of all?
Another good question for sure. There are a lot of existing chart libraries and they are pretty good though. And I tested a bunch of them. And the main thing I stumbled upon was getting into the details. I think we all know Tremor Labs and the Tremor charts and awesome components they are building. I kind of try to reproduce such charts, and what I found is that it's beautiful in the details. So you have to customize the X and Y axis, but also the dashes on that axis, and you have to customize the labels, colors. So you kind of need to be able to customize every detail. And that's when I found the Unovis. Do you say it? Unovis library?
Yeah.
They are making SVG-based charts, already looking good, but the configuration was a little bit harsh. And I do found two components within a chart very important, and that is the tooltip and that's legends. Those are two important additions of a chart. So I wanted to customize those two. And Unovis had a bit of weird construction to do the tooltip. So I wrote a simple function that's creating a new component that I can customize fully. Mm-hmm. And that's looking really, really good. So I don't want to copy and paste that to future projects. I thought, let's make a chart, let's make a library out of it. And yes, I posted it on X or Twitter or X. I don't know how you want to say it. A lot of people are liking it, so I guess I get through with this chart, and I'm gonna see where it brings me.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. Like, just okay, I need these charts in different projects. So let's build a wrapper around Unovis, and then making things even easier to customize where you need a little bit of like setup necessarily.
Exactly, yes.
And I've seen like you got like, I think 1,000 or so, even more like likes on Twitter, which is of course great. I mean, people are always fascinated about charts, benchmarks, speed up. So that was a good choice there as well. Before we get into the chart library part, what was your specific use case to say, okay, I need charts? Because you said like they fit kind of everywhere, but in which projects, if you can share that, of course, you thought like, okay, that type of chart was great, and here's why?
I did make my project before this project was our Nuxt arrow dashboard. So I previously launched an SEO tool on Product Hunt, and that went viral too, and there were way too many visitors on my site, and I tested the application like 50% and I didn't catch all those errors. So it was partly a success, but it failed tremendously because the errors I hadn't overseen. So I thought, okay, I need to get a dashboard simply take the Nitro plugin, catch the errors, and send it to some dashboard. I can see them easily. And that's when I worked on that dashboard. And this chart is amazing. And I got the line chart, but I thought I need a bar chart. The bar chart is way more cool than a line chart. So that was a moment where I did play with some different charts and thought, okay, there must be an easier way to get vector charts into my app without doing the configuration all over again. So that's kind of the reason.
Okay, so I'm not like so familiar with Unovis. So I'm wondering about what does Unovis provide, and then what does your chart library like add on top of this to like where are the lines there? The lines.
Yeah, that's smart. The most important difference is that Unovis is a wrapper around Day3.js, and Day3 provides exactly the vectors and the calculations between a time series and how much the values on the y-axis should scale if the data is increasing. So if you see that you have some reactive data, then the y-axis will scale with it. So that's what you obviously want. There are a specific set of calculations that D3.js provides, and Unovis makes a wrapper around that, so a bit easier to consume. But that's it too. It's just a wrapper around the x and y axis. They provide some custom options where you can tweak some CSS variables or something else. And yeah, I kind of make a wrapper around it to make that settings in Unovis even simpler. So I don't provide enormous value or insane calculations or something. You can see I make it just a little bit easier to customize the visual details.
I think I see a lot of this around where we have like libraries or even services that make things just easier to use. I think that is a huge value, like without adding necessarily any extra functionality. If you can, if instead of me taking a day to add a line chart to my app, I can take like an hour or even 10 minutes, that's a massive thing because that's the difference between me adding a line chart or me not adding a line chart to my app because it's just like an extra thing,
Yeah, I do think so. And I do not use AI a lot, but I saw the guys of Vercel and ChatGPT. They are pretty much intensify their CLI behavior and they want to run things via the CLI. So if you make things easier to generate, then those tools will be able to generate those things easier. I do think so. And if the generated code is also easier to interpret it, then junior devs can work way easier with it. I have tried to consume or build a D3.js implementation myself, and I could understand it, but it was a bunch of code, and you have to scroll and dig through it before you actually know what's happening, and you will understand it. But it's hard, and it's a lot of code. So if you can bring that down to a couple lines, and each line describes exactly what it does, yeah, that's make a life for junior dev even better, but also for senior devs, it's pretty to work with.
I guess it also helps with the abstractions to like, okay, here's that component, it works, here's documentation. You don't necessarily have to worry what's underneath. So you basically have that, let's say, subset of an API. It still does what it should. It might be a bit opinionated, but that's fine. And if you really need to, then you can also reach for something else if that doesn't fulfill your needs, so to say.
Yeah, of course. You could first try my library and think, the charts are awesome. But if you find yourself in a spot and you think, I need more, then it's a level to downstep to. And you think, I'm going to use Unovis directly. And so you can upgrade as you need it to more dedicated tools. I think we all do that in all kind of projects and software we use.
Yeah, definitely. Like, I think using a dependency or like a wrapper of a wrapper of a wrapper until you might need to go a little deeper makes a lot of sense because, well, the rule of least power, right? I have this specific subset. I use it until I need something more low level, so to say, or something that wrapper can't do. Now, you mentioned Unovis, and that's, of course, what your chart library is based on. But What about other chart solutions, like very common things like, I don't know, Chart.js and other libraries? Why not just rolling with them? Because they can also do like, I don't know, line charts, bar charts, and so on and so on. Probably also something you have thought about before and thought like, hey, here are the reasons why not, or like why.
Yes, I don't know if I have the reasons for each library here laid down, but what I could remember for Charge.js is that they provide a legend in the top right corner from the charge. And I find it way too hard to customize them. Maybe I didn't look enough, I don't know. But it's bothering me that is there. I didn't like it. So it's mainly the basic configuration that pushed me away from it. I maybe had to dig a little deeper to learn it, to get the API up and running. But what I said, it's a step to take to learn a new API, to learn new properties. And how faster a library teaches me off, I'm going to look for easier solutions. So, and I saw the Sebastian from the Nuxt, the Nuxt author. I saw him using Unovis in a Nuxt UI Pro example somewhere, and that looked insane. Looked so good. So that was the reason that I thought, maybe I should try that library because that's looking clean. Basic configuration is clean. Let's go for that. So I can't say that I tested them all and tested everything or 100%, but I liked Unovis really fast.
I used Chart.js in a Vue project a number of years ago, and my experience was that there were some challenges with the reactivity, sometimes not working correctly. And I think it was really simple to get going and get started, but once I needed to like customize something or get it to look a specific way, that like specific customization was really difficult to do. And there was not like an easy way to like, you say like go down that level of abstraction to like get a little bit more control over what's going on. There was just like, it was like I hit a brick wall and was like, okay, we have to throw it out and like try something new entirely. So, I mean, it could be different now in later versions, but that's what I recall.
Yeah, same exactly.
Yeah, also like I think Chart.js is notoriously well known for not having the best docs. At least I've seen, like I've used it, and for as you said, for like basic use cases, like it works, it's fine. I think it's very powerful, but yeah, it's not that not that trivial to go through all the options. And I've seen like countless times on social media, people like, oh, if someone would just make a doc site for Chart.js with all the kinds of examples and code to copy, and then just smash ads on that, they would be a millionaire. Probably not exactly, but I wouldn't lie if I wouldn't have thought about it for a second. I didn't, of course, create a doc site.
But I think something you said is really spot on. You said the ability to copy paste something. I think we all like that we see an example that exactly matches our needs, and then we can swap up the code and copy paste it. And it's even faster than using AI or something. It's why it's there and it's looking good. I want this. And
exactly,
if you can copy that to your project, it's an awesome feeling. So that's a good reason.
100%. And then having, of course, all these examples that show different ways of doing things that like, hey, here are 1,000 examples, maybe they're tagged and you're like, I don't know, I want a bar chart and it should have, I don't know, legends, the legend only for, I think legend on the left or left and right and both whatsoever, like some more complex things as well. And yeah, that's, I think it is always tricky because you have all these like options to actually draw charts and all these different use cases from like, I don't know, scatter plots and things to simple bar charts. And it is tough. The other thing I think of Chart.js is like that it's a canvas-based library. So it's not SVG-based, which makes debugging not necessarily easier. And of course, also the implication that like, okay, Canvas is browser only, so you have to run the client. That might also mean some flickering for like SSR content. Well, in SVGs, you can just like fire it up and like, here's the data, and it's fine.
Yeah. Unovis has on this point no support for SSR as far as I know.
Okay,
they use the document, I guess, to generate the first baselines. Don't know this for sure, but I'm experimenting with some layer that I can fake the document on the server and actually support the server-side rendering in Nuxt. Working on a module for Nuxt specific, so SSR is highly on top on the list because yes, it's awesome if it gets server-side rendered. And the only thing you said it's canvas based. Canvas based is a bit harder to debug, but it comes with performance gains. I said it before that my Reddit post was pretty not aggressive but well commented, and the criticized yes. The most upvoted comment below that post was the performance of vector based charts. He said around 1,000 data points you get lag and your chart will slow down. I commented below, okay, thanks for pointing it out. I never had such use case before, so thanks that I know it now. But that's another question to take. Do you need 1,000 data points into your dashboard, or do you want to visualize just a time series over a year? Are that 1,000 data points? I don't know for sure, but yeah, that's a kind of a choice that you have to make.
I guess that's because there are just so many DOM nodes going on in the document that it starts to slow down.
Yeah.
I think that's a good question because it's like, well, okay, that makes sense. At around 1,000, it starts to slow down. But how useful is it to see 1,000 things on the screen at once? Like, is
exactly,
it
yes.
like, can you actually understand that? Like most charts and most analytics that I look at, it's like if you're looking at a specific day, there's like, okay, there's a data point per hour. But when you zoom out to the year, you don't need a data point per hour because you can't, it's not useful anymore. You might as well just do like one per day or even like one per week, you know?
Yeah.
And so probably that's more of like a UX question. Just like I remember one time trying to figure out how to get like, we had a modal system and we were trying to figure out how do you open a modal from a modal. And then we were like, wait a second. This is a UX question. Why have stacked modals in the first place? Like, let's just not do that. And then we solved that issue. So
you
sometimes it's a UX problem.
you solved it by avoiding it, so to choose not modal in modal. Yeah, it's funny you say that. I'm working at a great Dutch company, and they have thought of modal and modals many times, and they build it in jQuery and PHP. Long story. But my team is always do we need this? Do we need a modal in a modal? And they have a modal on desktop, and sometimes a bottom drawer within that modal. So like to fake iOS bottom drawer within a modal on desktop. It's so weird to do. And my team is always, do we have to do this? And I go to the stakeholders and ask, do we have to do this or can we skip this? No, I want this in the project. And it's so bad. So we pretty much want to avoid it too. But sometimes we don't make that decision.
Yeah, it's tricky, but I think especially they're starting with like, hey, look, let's actually see if that's something we can improve UX wise, and then we can avoid all of that. Would be great.
Yeah,
I think though in terms of like 1,000 nodes, I mean, I'm also not a big like data visuals like guy, but I've seen quite some scenarios, especially like time series and so on, where like okay, or like everything related to maps. You don't want to put every point on like I don't know the map of Europe somewhere. I don't know, every city. That's not necessarily a good idea. But on the other hand, you also wanted to still be like as fine-grained as possible. Like when you zoom in, you add more and so on and so on. So I also see, let's say, I don't know, you have an election at the city and want to show the different districts with certain things. There can be a few elements, especially if we add like tooltips and popovers, and then in there you have some more options. It can be difficult. But luckily, also there in Vue, that's something a lot of people looking forward to, right? Vapor mode might help with that. So the rendering actually in the reactivity changes of like the templates will be just more fine-grained and easy, and then also on par with things like Svelte and Salt, and even better than that. I think the last stats were showing that Vue Vapor mode will be even faster when it comes to that.
That's awesome.
So we've talked about that like in our, I think, 2025 prediction episode a little bit, but right now, like Vapor mode is still work in progress. There will be, if everything goes well, an experimental version in 3.6. I think hydration is not ready. So for SSR, it's not there yet, but the Vue team is like working hard to get that done. But it would be great to like actually have that working, because I think data visualization is like one of the few cases where it actually matters, where you have like these insane amount of DOM nodes, at least sometimes, and want to make sure that things
Yeah.
work also like fine granularly on mobile systems as well, and low-end devices too.
Yeah, true. Especially low-end devices, yes.
So yeah, can't wait for that to happen. And if I think you can already try it out, like in a Vapor playground. We also linked that in the show notes for everybody curious. And then we can't wait for the next Vue minor version as well, where things happening.
Is there a time path for Vue Vapor that you know of?
This is no like set thing, but I personally think this year would be very realistic. Of course, not like with full feature parity or like options API support, but as experimental comes in 3.6 and the playground is already running it pretty well, I can imagine like we would see it this year. Yeah.
Awesome. I have to dive a little bit more into that. That's a great material to dive into next week or this week maybe.
Absolutely. And there, like as you said, there is the REPL you can already try out. You can like run things in and see how fast it actually is. So definitely recommend checking it out. Also some links for that for everybody interested in the show notes for the playground. But also there is a great document, we mentioned it before, about diving into the source code of Vue Vapor, which is of course a whole different story than using it. It's like, okay, contributing and writing, but also a link for that down in notes. Okay, so we've talked about, like we've mentioned your chart library now quite a bit. And as you said, okay, you wanted to make sure that you don't have to copy paste components, run projects, which is always a good idea. That's like how great contributions start, of like, okay, not copy pasting 10 times, just like putting it in an npm package and let's go. So could you maybe give us a little rundown what type of like charts your library include right now, and maybe what the big picture or the vision of the library would be from your side, if there's like a big plan, so to say?
Yeah, of course. I just released a beta version, and that's containing the basic chart types like a line chart, area chart, bar chart, and stacked area charts. Yeah, stacked. I said that correctly. So those are the basic charts we expect in any dashboard, and my focus is to get that stable. That's the first version. I don't know if I want to zoom in on all chart types and make it like a Unovis wrapper for Vue that can do anything. I just want to focus on the dashboard side of charts. So everything we can see in, for example, Google Analytics. It's a great, if you have all the dashboards open, I find it great to watch it. Those are the charts I want to focus on, and also add some more components that not are charts. So the status component I really like with the tiny little steps that shows when you're up and running or not. So the chart library is one basic library, and I'm going to focus on even more components that will enrich any dashboard. So that you can copy and paste the charts, but also can copy and paste other useful components for your dashboard.
I think that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, like focusing on that specific subsection. Are you also planning to make some, let's say, I mean, you have examples up there like, hey, this is how like a bar chart works or a line chart or similar. Are you planning to make like a little dashboard demo where you, let's say, have random live data being generated and the charts are updating, maybe some animations for that and all? Is it also on the list to see like, hey, this is what you could do, or maybe here even some like default animations that happen when you like update a chart or similar?
Yes, that's the first thing I'm going to do before expanding any chart types. I imagine a bar chart or an area chart with a sort of slider above that you can drag and that you can visualize the data changes into the chart. Mm-hmm. I think that's something we as front-end developers really like. And it's cool to demo to stakeholders. If you say, I assume if we change this button color from green to blue, I assume that we increase sales by 1%. And then you drag that bar to a percent extra and you see the data visualized. Yes. That sells, I guess. I'm becoming enthusiastic about this, or I get motivated about such components. So that's something I want to share, and maybe others are really excited about that too, and that's great. Yeah, that's my focus. If it's make me happy, then I do think it will make other people happy too.
More than sure, there are always like people, the same with like, I don't know, if you have a bug, you're not the only one having that usually. There are other people. Exactly. And maybe they say something or maybe even contribute or just be like, or just use it, right? On that note, as like the library is open source, obviously, it's already available on GitHub, and also link to that in the description/show notes. Do you do open source like in your spare time, or are you allowed doing that throughout like some work hours? So how does it work for you usually?
I'm kind of new to the open source world. I programmed a long time, but never did use or never did contribute to open source. But it's greatly allowed in our company, and the junior devs are pretty motivated to contribute to any library. So we had a bug in Tailwind CSS4 lately.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
We were early adopters from the customized container queries. So you can container queries 600 pixels. And there was a bug that container queries didn't work anymore just after release. So one guy of my team, he was, let's go. I find a solution. Let's share tickets into GitHub. I do think it's really valuable to provide your knowledge back to the open source world. If I see my company, they use Nuxt, they're not making money with it because it's not public yet. But if it's public and they can use it, it's generating a lot of revenue. So my opinion is that at least a part of that revenue belongs to the open source world or the creators of that software. So it's a kind of hard balance between contribute to open source, but you have to make money too. I guess that's how it sounds for a lot of people. So I do it for fun, and if I encounter some kind of bug, I will notice it, try to solve it. Yeah, that's my part new for contribution to open source.
But it's already great that you can do it throughout like your working hours, and you're not like, there's a bug, and I know there are some especially bigger corporates, and then they have policies saying, oh yeah, you can't do that because then illegal and this and. No. As a German, I've heard things. While of course, then what will happen is to just do it like sneakily with a different account, or like just write it down, do it in their like spare time. But often they just don't do it then because, well, it's also extra time. So even better that it's possible for you doing that through the work hours. And of course, thanks for giving back to the community. That's amazing.
Yeah, nice. Really love to do it. And I think everyone should, especially if you make money about other people's work, then you have to give something back, right?
That would be great. I mean, the whole like topic of open source sustainability and like funding is sadly not solved. I mean, they're great initiatives like the open source pledge, where basically companies say, hey, we give 2,000 euros per like developer or employee. Not entirely sure, but you can check the website. I think it's per developer to open source projects per year, which is like, hey, if you have a well-running company, that is usually a small amount compared to what you pay on salaries and so on, of course. And then you can even say, hey, yeah, I don't know, we use a certain package or a certain library. They are underfunded. Spoiler, most of them are. Let's give them some money out of that.
Yeah, it would be so great.
And yeah, I think also if like more and more corporations would do that, that would just help. Plus, they can choose, for example, hey, that's our own stack. Let's support them. So we make sure we still can use them, or there's a new version, things run faster, better, and so on and so on.
Yeah, and our people don't have to spend time fixing bugs or maintaining this project, and they can focus on real business issues within the company. So it's a win-win. Certainly.
Exactly. I mean, that would be the other option of contributing, right? It's not only money. I've talked with Patzak about it also in the last episode, when he is hired full-time to do like full-time open source and Stackblitz, but there are also other models like 50-50 or a certain percent. So that's another way, let's say, to not like throw money at it, but make sure, okay, people that maintaining critical parts or important parts of open source can pay their bills.
Yes, of course. It must be a win-win, that's for sure.
It's kind of crazy when you think about like if open source software was all like if it didn't exist and was entirely paid for, there'd be so many companies that just wouldn't exist because they wouldn't have been able to get started or afford the software, or wouldn't, even now wouldn't be able to afford the software. So give some money back.
So. I mentioned some, but we all know the feeling that we really bite into a bug or bite into a solution we cannot find, and often that's happening in the night hours or in the evening when you're not at work. You can get loose from it, and you keep thinking about it. But you say many problems get solved by open source contributors. If it wasn't open source, that problems would maybe never get solved. So we are 20 years behind without open source, I guess.
Yeah, and some ideas don't even come up. Some things never happen. I also like the model that's like some source available because they're not by definition open source like projects follow on, that you just say, okay, hey, it's free until your company reaches a certain amount of like revenue they make, and then you have to get licensed. Where it's like, it's basically open for everyone starting up, and then at the end for the people reaching a certain threshold. I mean, I don't know, let's say if you have 10 million ARR, then you can probably also pay for a license in a way.
You would
So
say.
that's at least a way of not saying, I don't know, you have all these different options for like freemium, open core, and so on, so on, where it's a bit tricky, but that seemed like a somewhat straightforward solution.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, so you'd put down some things about what makes a good dashboard. We've kind of covered that a little bit about, charts make a good dashboard. But do you have any other thoughts around maybe some UI, UX ideas around that?
Yeah, I do think charts make a lot of a good dashboard. Also, data tables. When you can get to filter data, they are just awesome.
Another easy component.
Yeah, I did tweet about the Nuxt UI 3 data tables that they're using 10 stack tables. And I just couldn't get used to 10 stack tables, but now they are in Nuxt 3 UI and I played a bit more with it. I'm getting pretty hyped that it's the best solution to make such complex data tables, especially
Agreed.
with pagination and filtering. I think that's a pretty good spot for now. So if you say what's a good dashboard, I imagine some data cards, a chart, and an awesome data table below it. And then you can filter out anything you want. And it's visual awesome to look at.
That makes a lot of sense. Like all the dashboards that you have all the data you want straight away. It could be customizable as well. It's always a big aspect. But like, oh, I want to see that differently, or like give me that time span and save all of that. And yeah, but it's also not a like super simple thing to build. Just mentioned data tables, but also if you have all the components ready, the sheer amount of data, and like then you start with like, okay, you need pagination, you need filtering, you need sorting. It it can be really tough, even though if you're like, oh, it's just a bit of data, you display it.
Yeah, let's filter it out. So a thing with there is a thing with pagination though. You can paginate at the front end, so you get 1,000 records from the API and you divide it in pages. But if you need to combine the pagination component to an API and have to get pages with query parameters, page it's X or whatever, that's a combination that's hard too. So yeah, you can have the components. They should all be able to use pretty easily, but then you have to do the data fetching and transform it to whatever you need. So that's another topic maybe.
Yeah, that could be probably a whole other episode around that as well.
Yeah.
On that note, like in your company, like your daily dev life, if you use Nuxt, do you use like a separate backend, or is it all written in Nuxt.js and Nitro? So how are you usually doing that for your case?
No, it is a pretty old company, so the APIs are really old and they are making
Java.
No, PHP.
Oh, okay.
Symfony,
That was
Symfony Fuego.
That was a second guess.
Yeah, I say Symfony, but the real core API is built on Zen. Zen, do you know?
Oh,
Zen?
that framework. Yeah.
It's pretty old too.
It's called Laminas now. I think it still is kind of around. Yeah.
I think you're right, exactly. So they're making new APIs for us, and we parse it to the Nuxt server routes. I love the option to cache our server routes. That in combination with Keep Alive, that has blown away some backend developers at our office. They come with me, work something on my page, and I go page back. How is this so fast? Did we do that? I said, no,
Nope.
that's the next part of the application. You did nothing. You have nothing to do with that. So
you wish.
Yeah, you wish. It was fast. Yeah, I know. That's something we do. We do that. We call the API endpoint from our Nitro server, do some caching, and then modernize it to what we need. Also, the transformer is awesome. We get a lot of unnecessary API data, and we transform it exactly to our component props, and we can just v-bind the response. Yeah, it's a little too heavy, but we can bind almost directly the response, and it's works. So that's the approach we use.
That's a really nice pattern, because then you don't have to rewrite your entire backend, but you still get the Nuxt app you're building gets a nice backend that's fast and like cached and everything. And I've had a bug where we were v-binding data from the API pretty much directly, but the component only took like a few props, and then the actual object from the database had, I don't know, there were like probably like 20 or 30 different properties on this thing. So then when you go to like open up the dev tools and like try and debug the actual HTML elements, then all of a sudden you notice that there's like dozens and dozens of extra attributes that were put on to the elements because they weren't props. So Vue was like, oh, this is HTML attribute. So you have
Yeah, it's
like
just
all
an
these weird,
Yeah,
all
yeah,
this
to
weird
define
like
it.
JSON in the DOM, and it was like, okay,
Yeah,
that's
like user
weird.
object
What?
object. That's also a very common thing to see.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah, you have to change that. Yes, that's so cool. And on transformers, you apply a response type, and you apply the type you expect in your components, and you write that once, and it will work. And if the API is sending more data, if everything is correctly, we can see it while programming. That's not good, but we going get back from the API. So
That's
I
true.
love
Yeah.
Nuxt server endpoint.
Yeah, the whole like back and forth front end pattern is really useful. And then like every application of multiple apps use the same backend as well. Like different deployments, different regions whatsoever can have their own caches, their own cache timers as well. So it's really like customizable, and you also don't have to budget. Like, hey, backend developer, can you change this and that? So you can just do it yourself, which is pretty helpful, so to say.
True, very true.
For those server routes, are you using something like Zod or I don't know, maybe like contract testing or something like that to verify that the other API is going to give you back the things that you're expecting and things don't get weird and change around?
Not yet. It's now it's response types with bind an interface to the response, and we say, okay, we expect a type for component X, and that's while developing we can play with it. But as you mentioned, Zod will prevent even more API data to come into the application, and that's not the case for us right now. If the API is sending more data, yeah, then we would see, but it's not like automatically, because that is runtime checking. So you bind your types to the runtime format. Yeah, it would be a good solution. I think I have a new task for this week to do.
There we go.
Well, sorry for that.
Well, I mean, it has pros and cons, right? So
Yeah.
Yeah, in my private projects, I do use it. I wrote a little CLI for the server last time to reproduce some Laravel behavior in the Nitro server folder. And there you want you have some resources and you have some request validation. And there you want to request validate with Zod. So kind of question myself why I do that in my private projects, but to not apply it on my 9 to 5. Maybe I have to do that.
yeah, definitely you should, or at least bring it up, and then people are like, oh, what's that? Oh, parsing is apparently cool. Can make sure things work in runtime as well, not only pretend they do at build time.
True.
And like you can use any kind of, that's also nice library, no matter if it's like Volleybot, Zod. There are tons of others that use ideally standard schema, because the method to like validate, you can even just write your own in Nitro. So you can do like, I don't know, read validate, or like the validated body, same for like query and so on. You can write your own function, just pass in like a parse function with a schema.
Yeah,
So that's
cool.
That's really, really powerful. And there's more to come.
Yeah, it's really exciting to be part of this ecosystem. And I see a lot of backend developers kind of look at Nuxt before they, oh, it's ugly, it's JavaScript in the backend, I don't like it. But now they see pretty much how the ecosystem provides lots of values. And think, oh, that's pretty cool. We need that too in the backend. I know for sure you need that in the backend. So that's very cool.
Yeah, it's so great to see how that modern touch like influences people. We're like, okay, I see where this is useful. There's still some parts that I don't like about it, but it's like, okay, that's good. Good that we have that.
Yes, let's coach them to do Nuxt too.
Yes, that would be great. That is the step where we're going. All right. For your dashboards, I mean, you have, of course, your chart library. Is there any like UI library that you prefer to use it with? Do you like all hand roll it? What's your thing there usually?
I do use Nuxt UI a lot lately. Did use Chaptermarks Vue implementation too, but I found Nuxt UI it's really good, customizable, and it's looking good already. So that's one thing I use the most lately, and I think I'm gonna use it for the upcoming projects all along. And my chart library will be focusing on supporting Nuxt as most important, and therefore Nuxt UI too. So
Nice.
what do you guys use if you have to choose a library today for a new product?
So I would choose Nuxt UI now, but
Nuxt
that's
UI
only
too.
a more recent thing for me. I spent a number of years working on component library for a company, so I built it all from scratch. And so that was like one of the most fun things that I've done. So then I kind of got stuck in this mode where I just couldn't use any other UI library. I just wanted to hand roll everything myself. And it's fun to make like little, context menus and drop downs and things like that until it's not fun and you realize that there's all these like bugs and things and you're like, okay, maybe I should just swap it out for something else and then customize it from there. So that's where I'm at now. I think my site and like my course platform and stuff, I'll have to slowly transition over to Nuxt UI
Awesome.
eventually.
Pretty sweet. Yeah, I'm kind of in the same boat, I would like to say. I think I still handle a lot of things because I don't build huge dashboards, but for like, let's say, internal applications, I just roll with Nuxt.js. I was there because it's customizable. With Nuxt.js Pro, it's super easy to just like get some really nice components out of the box and still update them. So yeah, all in all, that's it. But I think for like more landing page related things, I also like to use Inspira UI. I also made a long video about that because it's really like you just
Mm-hmm.
copy paste things. It's Tailwind supported, but it's more like for design aspects, not like here's the data table component, but more like here's a really cool, I don't know, button with a rainbow border or like a certain effect.
Yeah, that's cool.
And yeah, shout out to the people there. Also like to Reka UI, which is the underlying UI primitives for Nuxt UI as well. So it's basically
Yes.
a rebrand from Radix, and that's pretty good. So yeah,
It's
can't.
one guy, Cernonia is his name called, I guess.
Yeah,
He's
yeah,
from the.
exactly.
He's also contributed to the Unovis Vue package a lot, so that's really
Correct.
really nice.
Yeah, that's the good part. He's also into charts for sure, and like the whole the whole Radix viewport and now like the rebrand is like a really amazing job. So
Lots of
shout
credits
out.
to him.
Yes. All right, then I think we can slowly wrap it up. Then maybe the last question that could be pretty interesting then is where can people follow you if they want to see how the chart library is going, maybe if they want to contribute, if they want to reach out and say, hey, have you thought about that, this, some more questions besides, of course, in the comments here / on YouTube or on socials. So yeah, where can people find you?
I'm pretty active on X lately, so I post every day, mostly every day. So please follow there or send me a direct email. If you have my number, call me or ask for my number. I'm here to help, and I like to share what I'm building. So keep an eye on my X profile, and I will share a lot of there.
Perfect. The links to all of that in the show notes, including your number. No kidding, but we'll get all the links down there so people can follow along.
Awesome.
All right. Thanks for coming on. And yeah, it's been lovely to chat with you and to learn about some charts and things like that. I'm going to have to find an excuse to add charts to my next projects so I can use
Definitely.
this
Thanks
one.
for having me. It has been fun. Thank you again.
Of course. And for everybody out there, if that's not the latest episode, then jump to the next one or like keep listening. Otherwise, check out the older episodes. We mentioned a few quite old or the recent ones. But yeah, definitely have a look and follow along for more information around the Nuxt ecosystem. See you next episode, and thanks for tuning in, folks.